Are we stuck with the brain that we were born with? Or is our gray matter like a muscle that can actually be trained to be smarter? 30 years ago, a young woman who couldn't even tell time designed a series of exercises that improved her brain's ability to learn.
It really did feel like I was fighting for my life at that point.
Today, Barbara Arrowsmith is applying her discoveries to change the lives of many students through intense brain training. But the program is under fire from skeptics.
I was shocked when I read about it. First of all, there were claims that it could make miraculous cures for people with learning disabilities.
But for some graduates, the program has changed their lives.
Arrowsmith gave life a possibility for me.
This is the story of 4 boys in their first year at Arrowsmith School, a brain boot camp that takes no prisoners, but promises to change the brain they were born with.
The mouse is drinking. The paint is drying. The man is eating.
The mouse is drinking. The paint is drying. The mouse...
The road to a better brain begins with 4 grueling days of testing to discover each student's learning dysfunctions.
The mouse is drinking.
Okay.
And you want...
But the kids who turn up at the Arrowsmith School know all too well what their problems are.
Other seeds come from flowers more than 111... I don't know the number. I couldn't do math. I couldn't take the numbers and add them together or subtract them, or it was horrible.
How's your math?
Pretty good.
Good. This test is untimed,
Okay.
so don't rush through it.
Okay. My writing is pretty much the same since it was in grade 1. Some of my teachers actually gave up on trying to teach me and just passed me so they don't have to see me for another year.
The rain is splashing. The water is dripping.
I'm very slow. Like, it takes me forever when I was in high school to do homework and work. Like, if it took someone 3 hours to write an essay, it would take me like 17.
Are you ready now?
Yeah.
Go.
Usually I'm not good at English at all. I'm just not really good at anything. Mostly I don't understand what I'm reading, like comprehension. It's really hard for me to understand, and usually I have to go to my teacher like 24/7 or something. It's really hard.
Do you think you have it memorized yet?
Not yet.
Okay, keep going. Begin.
I'm not good at making out sentences, making out letters, essays. Well, I sort of just feel hopeless when I'm doing any English subject. Like reading, I can't imagine the story in my head. Other kids, they just try to cheer me up, and it really doesn't work, really. It's about me when I'm growing into adulthood. Yeah, and become what I really want to become. I thought I was a failure. Me and the teachers fought. We'd sit there and yell at each other because they wouldn't understand.
I didn't think I would amount to anything. I thought I would just quit school, be a bum on the street, not have a job at all. It's me happy. Yeah.
When you're aware of the fact that, you know, you're inhibited from being successful, you sort of lose interest. I just see myself just sort of indifferent. I don't know, I'm not outwardly happy, and I wouldn't say that I'm, you know, manically depressed.
Actually, I felt like a loser in elementary school because everyone's teasing me. Everyone is like, "Oh, look at him." So I always had like 1 or 2 friends, barely anyone talked to me.
Pretty much, it's just me, like normal, just hanging around, doing nothing.
Having a learning dysfunction does not mean that you have a low IQ. People with learning disabilities have average or above average intelligence. But when some parts of the brain are slower or weaker than they should be, they create something like a bottleneck that impedes the efficient processing of information.
Most of us have bottlenecks. The human brain is a pretty eccentric clump of clay, and we tend to be good at some things and not others. You know, if your bottleneck is in an area that is not essential for survival in an information society, like you can't carry a tune, it's a little bit embarrassing, you know, once in a blue moon. But if your bottleneck is in one of those areas that's required for reading in an information society, you are in very big trouble.
It was essentially a war zone here. By grade 10, there were many days where I didn't get him to go to school. He was just so unhappy with everything that was going on with him that he wasn't participating.
I'm a math teacher. I recognized that there was something terribly wrong with his ability to do math. And he could never remember a number.
Just normal day-to-day conversations, he would have a lot of difficulty understanding, well, what I would consider like easy to understand the statements. He would, for instance, ask me to like repeat what I said, or I would give him an instruction to carry out, and he does the total opposite thing. And, you know, the first thing that would come out of his mouth is, "I'm all confused."
He spent like 5 years in school basically doing nothing. Yeah, I wish someone had actually tried to identify him earlier and recognize that, well, he's not doing so well. Maybe there's something else there. Maybe he's just not lazy, you know. We had to do all the work. The school board did nothing for us. They just don't have the time to deal with each individual student and the individual needs.
They also don't like the idea of failing a student if they're not up to par, because that creates low self-esteem. So even though the child should not just be pushed through, they still push them through without, you know, really thinking of their best interests.
For desperate parents looking for help, the Arrowsmith School website shines like a beacon. While traditional teaching methods offer learning disabled students ways to compensate for their weaknesses, the Arrowsmith program claims it can actually change the structure of a student's brain.
What we're doing is giving the child the fundamental capacity to learn, and then when they get reintegrated back into the school system with that capacity, they start to learn and they quickly pick up the content area. And we've done this over and over and over again.
Parents are also reassured by studies such as the one conducted by Dr. William Lancy, a top researcher in psychiatry at Mount Sinai Hospital in Toronto. He traced the learning curves of Arrowsmith students for 3 years.
I've never seen data like that before. There is something to this program. There's no question in my mind that it's very exciting for education.
The program offers 19 brain exercises to train 19 different cognitive areas of the brain. But even top neuroscientists can't put a definite number on the brain functions involved in learning. They would consider Barbara's count of 19 cognitive areas at best an arbitrary number.
Typically, areas don't have just one function. One area works together with other areas. And for most of the abilities that Barbara's talking about, there aren't 19 different areas related to those. But it doesn't mean that the activities might not be beneficial.
Beneficial or not, the reasons behind every Arrowsmith activity are hard to understand at first. Each classroom seems like a foreign country with a different language.
Blum tries Lian. Blum tries Lian. Blum tries Lian. Blum Lian tries. Blum Lian tries. Blum Lian tries. Tries Lian Blum. Tries Lian Blum.
Pretty much first day is like, what the heck is going on?
It's like some school that you just never seen invented.
The Arrowsmith program works on the premise that the brain is like a muscle that can be strengthened by specific exercises. The brain training effect comes from an emphasis on speed, repetition, and accuracy. Most students begin with a two-handed clock exercise and must be able to read and record 25 clock faces accurately in 70 seconds. Then the student progresses to a three-handed clock, all the way up to the 10-handed clock when mastery is achieved. How does reading a clock lead to a stronger brain? According to Arrowsmith, understanding the relationship between the hands of a clock strengthens the brain's capacity to see the connection between symbols, and that leads to understanding grammar, logic, and basic math concepts. And while it might seem that a small band of pirates has invaded the classroom, the eye patches serve a very specific purpose. The Arrowsmith theory is that when the left eye is blocked, the use of the right eye forces the left brain's premotor region to work harder. As a result, long hours of tracing develop smooth eye tracking during reading and strengthen eye-hand coordination during writing. Although the school offers classes in English and math, brain exercises form the bulk of student activity, every day for 2 to 3 years.
People often say that if you take a kid out of a regular class and put them in a class where they're getting brain exercises for a couple of years, that you may be doing the kid a disservice because you're separating them from their peers, and they're doing this very odd thing that no one else does, and they're falling behind in the curriculum. But that has to be weighed against the utter psychological devastation of having a kid sitting with his or her peers year after year and not getting it, and feeling more and more down on themselves and feeling stupid and inadequate.
One thing is certain, the Arrowsmith program requires a leap of faith from day one.
I went into it knowing full well there were no guarantees, but whatever we were doing, and wasn't working, so we had to try something else.
My husband has a saying, if nothing changes, nothing changes. And it's kind of how we live our life. If you want changes, you have to do something different.
As the living ever go.
For most parents and students, the very strangeness of the Arrowsmith method is what makes it feel so promising. Demoralized by years of failure at public schools and alternative programs, they all crave a brand new start.
I'd like to accomplish great things, and I'm fortunate that this came along.
First week I came in for testing, I was pretty much just like, wow, I actually fit in the school. It's like I never fit in anywhere else.
Tracing, R-think, L-think, all of this, and I thought we were just working for like ourselves, but really we're just working for the brain. It's like amazing.
I think that this program will work and I can get a grade 12 math and go to college and get a good career in farming or whatever I'm gonna do. But I'm just hoping. That's all I can do.
No matter what happens, it will be a year of dramatic changes for everyone. Matthew is under the gun to make major gains in the coming year. The Buckaways have remortgaged their house to pay his annual tuition costs of $20,000. And with 4 other kids at home, money is tight.
I like to think that if you invest in your kids, you'll get tenfold back later in life.
I'm one that likes guarantees at the end. I'm spending all this money, I want something out of it. I'm that type of person.
Jordan will work part-time to help pay for 1 year of Arrowsmith tuition. That's all his mother, a single parent, can afford. Alfred has left his friends and family in the Turks and Caicos to live with his uncle's family in Canada.
You want to make it gold?
It's his first time away from home, and he faces a 40-mile round trip to and from school every day. And Raymond will leave his family behind on their farm in Saskatchewan to live in Toronto and cope with big city life at the age of 14.
Raymond is a very social kid and treated it like a big adventure. It was a lot harder than I thought to send him away. There was many tears. I didn't have kids to send them away. It's just really hard to give that time away.
To the students at her schools, Barbara Arrowsmith is the genius who paved the road that they're traveling on, a road that promises to change the brain they were born with.
And it's just like building muscles in your brain. You're exercising your brain and getting stronger, so learning is going to be easier. And I think a number of you have started to feel that, right? You're doing the work.
But what makes Barbara special to these students is that she was once one of them, a child with severe learning dysfunctions.
So I was having a lot of trouble learning how to read and how to write. And in mathematics, well, I might add this number to this number, and then I'd go across and add it to this number, and then I might add it to that number, and then go back across. What was going on inside of little Barbara was just feeling isolated, really feeling dumb, feeling stupid.
Although she couldn't understand much of what she was taught, Barbara's phenomenal visual and auditory memory allowed her to memorize her way to a master's degree in school psychology.
Even up into graduate school, I'd have to read something maybe 25 times, and still even after 25 times, I wasn't sure that I understood it. And the cost was having to work all the time. I mean, pretty much working 20 hours and sleeping 4, and I'm basically just working around the clock. I mean, there was the real me with all the struggles, and then there was this me that was trying to show a good face to the world. There was this sort of little girl in there crying out for help.
The pressure of her limitations became so intense that Barbara contemplated suicide.
I was feeling, tremendous despair and thinking, what is there in the future? And it was bleak. And at that point, I can remember, standing on a subway platform and thinking maybe this was a choice. And I had it all calculated exactly, where one has to stand for the most impact.
They say that when the student is ready, the master will appear. And for Barbara, that master was Alexander Luria, whose books she discovered in university. Luria was a Russian neuropsychologist who mapped the functional areas of the brain while studying injured soldiers during World War II. Luria's book about a man with a brain injury described the same learning difficulties that Barbara experienced and suggested that certain brain areas were the source of learning dysfunctions. The work of scientist Mark Rosenzweig gave Barbara a second flash of insight. His experiments showed that rats in an enriched environment grew larger brains and had more brain chemical transmitters between cells. In other words, outside stimulation made a rat smarter.
And I thought, if you can take Lurie's work and understand what a brain area does, and you can match that up with Rosenzweig's work to find an activity or an exercise that works the brain area, then why couldn't there be neuroplasticity in the human brain?
But in 1978, that was an audacious idea. Scientists had mapped the human brain over centuries and believed it was hardwired and could not be changed. If you were born with weak cognitive functions, that was your destiny. But Barbara was convinced she was onto something new. At the age of 28, Barbara decided to try to fix her own brain through a rigorous program of cognitive exercises. Using a series of flashcards, she worked 14 hours a day to understand the relationship between the hands of a clock.
I strained until there was nothing left to strain, and then I would roll over into bed and then get up the next morning and start the routine over again. It really did feel like I was fighting for my life at that point.
After months of relentless effort and discipline, many of Barbara's learning dysfunctions disappeared. She could now tell time, read books, understand math concepts, and follow conversations as they happened.
It was like the whole world opened up. I remember going into a library and looking at all these books and actually crying because I thought, there's this whole world of knowledge that's been closed to me for 28 years.
What Barbara did that was so significant scientifically was to take the brain map that had been developed by Alexander Luria, which showed that mental functions seemed to have a location in different parts of the brain, and wed Luria's work to the work of Mark Rosenzweig, which showed that you could exercise mental functions in animals and see if you could do it in human beings.
Unlike scientists who were studying brain cells in laboratories, Barbara lacked scientific credentials. As a result, experts in education greeted her dramatic breakthrough with ridicule.
I was shocked when I read about it. First of all, there were claims that it could make miraculous cures for people with learning disabilities. And I knew that that could be quite difficult.
There was really no concept generally in the field of education that there was neuroplasticity. I mean, this was sort of in the labs, so it hadn't trickled out to education. I mean, I got labeled things like a charlatan.
Undeterred by rejection, Barbara and her husband, Josh Cohen, opened Arrowsmith School in 1979. Since then, thousands of students with learning dysfunctions have passed through the program, and many have been integrated back into the regular school system without extra support.
And in terms of our success rate, and we've done a number of research studies at this point, and conservative estimate is 80% of the students are successful.
Today, science has confirmed Barbara's original insight, that the brain is plastic and changeable and will grow smarter through external stimulation. That reality is called neuroplasticity.
Neuroplasticity is going on all the time, and so at some level it's mundane. Your brain is being changed by watching this television program. If you remember what happened, that memory is stored in changes in the connections among the 100 billion brain cells that you've got up here. So when we study neuroplasticity, we know there are lots of different kinds of changes that can take place within the brain. How is it that a synapse, which is a tiny little connection between two brain cells, can get 50% stronger as a result of exercising the pathway? And what we're finding is that exercise of brain pathways creates superhighways in your brain. Repetition is one way to build superhighways in your brain.
Three months into the school year, the initial excitement about brain exercises has worn off, and Alfred Smith is feeling the strain. He's doing an exercise called R-Think, designed to improve the ability to read social cues.
She has in her hand. He got something in his hand, and I don't see it. It looks like a piece of paper, but yeah. This is a mystery to me, because I'm not sure if this is a restaurant. Saying he's a...
He spends hours trying to figure out what's happening in the illustration.
As I advance more and more, it gets harder. So I'm getting a little step back here, you know. I kind of trip.
Because you spend an entire day actively engaged in contrast to normal school, it's a lot more tiring per se by the end of the day, and there truly is that feeling at the end of the day where your brain's actually sore.
The two sort of hallmarks of this work are active engagement, which means the brain is attending to what it's supposed to attend to, and it's having to process at a level that's creating strain.
And it's just like, why do I have to do this? I want to get out of here. I don't want to be stuck in this program for another year.
This is boring, but if you keep going.
But when my eyes landed on my mom, I found her beautiful.
Dan Cooper was one of Barbara's first students. He now runs special projects at Fox River Financial in Chicago.
Lots of self-help programs say, hey, do the things that you love or that you're good at. Well, in Arrowsmith, they say, do all the things that you're terrible at and do them for 6 hours a day.
When Dan began the program at the age of 14, he was unable to read or do basic math.
My mom was worried that I couldn't even fill out an application or drive into a city and read the street signs. I mean, that was that bad.
Dan's parents tried dozens of different methods to help him learn, but nothing worked until he finished 3 years at the Arrowsmith Brain Boot Camp.
Well, after 6 months, I think I ended up picking up a book, and I think I read my first book. And it wasn't like a kid book. It was like an actual normal-looking book that you read on the subway and feel good about. and that was, I think, a big definable difference.
Not only did Dan graduate from college, but his job at Fox River takes him around the world as an ambassador for economic growth projects.
The flags up on the roof there represent all the different countries we've worked in.
His current project is to help finance an efficient railway line from the sea through Tanzania to Rwanda.
Right here. I'm playing half investment banker, half diplomat. It's quite a project, but I think we're going to get it done.
By Christmas, every Arrowsmith student has completed hundreds of thousands of brain exercises.
Scrap you. Jocelyn Blum.
Culine sense, Culine sense. Q sense lane.
I can just see when I'm doing math at home and in stores, and I can just see it's getting better.
Me and my dad both think that my writing has gotten better.
Jordan is scorching his way through clocks and has already mastered the 8-handed clock. He knows this exercise is designed to improve his ability to understand logic and solve math problems.
I'm more optimistic, but I wouldn't say I'm ecstatic.
What worries Jordan is whether his great speeds at clocks will transfer over to real life. After all, it's still taking him 10 seconds to read his wristwatch.
It's kind of funny spending all this time doing clocks and, not getting so quick at reading your watch.
Jordan decides that he's not working hard enough and redoubles his efforts. After putting in full days at Arrowsmith School, he now forces himself to spend his evenings at the library, doing even more brain exercises, even if it pushes him to the brink of burnout.
Now I found it. Now I found it.
There are dozens of programs available for students with learning dysfunctions.
Jacqueline, what letter do you have? F. Do you say that letter for me?
Firm Foundations is a method now being used by the North Vancouver School Board. It uses movement, social interaction, and sounds to improve a child's ability to read.
Apple. Apple. Two syllables, that's right.
Because this program is easily incorporated into public schools, it's inexpensive and easy to run, and it boasts a 98% success rate. Dr. Linda Siegel designed Firm Foundations. She also completed a small-scale study of the Arrowsmith method over a one-year period, and her conclusions were far less positive than other research.
And the children in the Arrowsmith program, most of them didn't really improve very much. The tasks that they do in Arrowsmith don't transfer to what they need to do in their ordinary schoolwork. It does not help them become better readers or spellers or better at doing arithmetic calculation. So that's the problem.
Tell the story.
But Arrowsmith does not claim to be a teaching aid for academic subjects, nor does it promise that 1 year will fix learning dysfunctions. Sheila Brown has been teaching a half-day Arrowsmith program with the Toronto Catholic School Board for the past 8 years.
The real academic changes take 2 or 3 or 4 years before they can participate in a high-level math or science or geography class. And we do have to be patient because it is a slow but steady progress. Many of the students have gone on to do very well in high school. Some of the students have reported marks in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I've had students who have gotten scholarships to university.
Because the Catholic School Board has adopted the program for half days, students can remain in a regular school throughout their education.
I then took the other about as fair and having perhaps the better claim that because it was grassy.
Jordan continues to push himself to the limit.
Phrase 41, then took the other as just.
But now, his motivation to succeed has driven him to take on a wide range of extracurricular activities.
Don't you think you should cut back a little bit? You put these in the fridge?
I don't feel I'm getting burnt out. I think I can handle it. I don't.
So the fact that there are mornings where you just don't want to get out of bed, that I should just, I just think you're just doing too much.
Priority number one's work in Arrowsmith, and so, if we have to cut back on the other stuff, so be it.
Raymond is having his own special problems.
I'm alone. I gotta do this myself. I have no one here to help me, so. In my classes, I started to fall back a little bit because I couldn't keep my mind quite settled, and I was kind of missing home a bit. And
by the end of January, Gail Evanson takes an unpaid leave of absence from her teaching job to help Raymond get through the rest of the year.
I have a 17-year-old at home with his father, so he's single parenting and managing the farm and working off farm as well. Families are supposed to be together, and you do what you have to do.
When Alfred returns to school after the holiday, he feels more homesick than ever, so his mother calls him every day as he waits for the train to school.
Yeah, she just asked him how I was. Because I had some bad days. Yeah, I've missed my friends and family.
Ready? And I'll try to help you as best as I can.
But with the support of his uncle, Alfred keeps on track with school and begins to explore a bit of Canadian culture as well.
You're thinking too hard about it, man. Just focus on keeping your balance, right? I try to encourage Alfred as much as I can. I let him know that, I mean, it's not easy, right? I know it's not easy for him. So I try to encourage him to let him know it's just something he has to do. Glad, man. Brother, nice. So you're walking nicely. Awesome, man. You're getting it, man. You're getting better at this thing. Ooh.
Meanwhile, the Buckaways are having second thoughts about the high cost of sending Matthew to Arrowsmith.
We've had to cut back a lot.
Yes.
You get to the point where it can be close to our bank account being absolute zero and our credit lines all being maxed out. So that's been difficult. I cut down to basic cable. All my kids all screaming about that, just so we can cut the monthly expenses down, largely because of what we paid for Matthew's schooling.
Did you have to dress up as anything?
No, we had a clown to do that already.
I've never spent this type of money for anything. So to me, it was like, my God, I could have a car for this.
To make matters worse, Matthew's brain doesn't seem to be changing fast enough to please his parents.
Like an outfit or something?
I don't think my brain's gotten any smarter. I still have my same messy or unorganized lockers and that.
At the times when I don't see the improvement there, I'm wondering, have we maybe not wasted our money, but could we have used it elsewhere where it was maybe more needed? Do they give out samples too, or? Yeah.
I think the biggest thing with Matthew is to remind her constantly, well, try not to do it constantly, Matthew, you're not doing your homework, but we pay 20 grand for you to go to the school. What are you doing, right?
Matthew responds to the pressure at home and school by doing exactly the opposite of what everyone wants. The end of the school year is just months away. The Arrowsmith program is expanding quickly across Canada, and in the US, 8 schools will offer the program next fall, even though there's still no scientific evidence that Arrowsmith improves brain functions.
It's very frustrating to have a child with a learning disability, and parents, I think, can be taken advantage of with expensive treatments. But I think a parent has to ask, show me the evidence. Where is the research that this will help my child?
Most parents are reassured by success stories and research charts that point to growing academic abilities. But to a neuroscientist like Dr. Adele Diamond, none of these factors validate the claims of the Arrowsmith program.
Okay, so whenever you see a heart, you press on the same side as the heart. Okay, here we go. Excellent. You are a pro. That was fantastic. Okay, now we're going to play a different game.
Diamond studies the executive function in the brain, which includes a student's ability to make choices and use judgment.
Whenever you see a flower, you press on the side opposite the flower. Okay, ready, set, go.
Before she comes to any conclusions, she gathers hard, quantifiable data that can be replicated and analyzed, the kind of data that only control groups and brain scans can deliver.
If you see a cognitive change, if you see improvement, or if you see a child who has a cognitive deficit, there should be something about the brain that is related to that. So if I give you an intervention and you improve on a cognitive skill, your brain should also show changes that go along with that improvement, because it's the change in your brain that underlies the change in your behavior or your cognition that we see.
Nice. Awesome. So now you're gonna play the game with both colors, so you have to try really hard.
It may be that if Barbara's program works, it may not work for the reasons that Barbara thinks. So it may work because it's forcing children to concentrate for long periods and training them on concentration skills. It might be that the program helps because there's small classes and a lot of individual attention and encouragement.
Keep thinking, okay?
Nevertheless, Barbara is determined to get her method out to as many schools as possible.
The flash 6 hands is really impressive. I always am focused on the children that I haven't yet reached, and I don't think I'll ever be satisfied in my life until this work is in the publicly funded school system to reach more children.
Arrowsmith's brain training concepts are now also being offered to seniors who want to keep their brains limber.
I had a retired professor at the University of Toronto out of the medical school that came to me in her 70s, and she'd never been able to recognize faces, and it had always bothered her. So we worked on that area, and she improved the same rate that a 15-year-old would.
And not surprisingly, baby boomers are beginning to line up for the brain training that claims to keep Alzheimer's at bay.
If you really want to change your brain, the best time to do that is when you're young. There's no question that the early years are the years during which your brain is the most plastic, the most changeable. Now, what we thought until quite recently was that, this plasticity basically ended at 3 or 5 or 7, it trailed off. And that's probably still true for some brain areas. But there are other brain areas in which that plasticity goes on forever.
I believe that these cognitive programs that comprise the Arrowsmith program can absolutely be applied to the aging brain and significantly re-strengthen or build back those cognitive capacities that are declining with age.
So here at our Brain Research Center, we have people who are leading the charge in developing new strategies to treat diseases of the elderly, like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, stroke. We have a very active effort called the Learning Brain. And in that program, we are working on ways to harness the learning power of the brain and to enhance it.
Two symbols, two hands, working on the same surface, getting different information.
We can also have new brain cells being born. And that's something we didn't realize until about a decade ago, that you and I are still making a few thousand new brain cells every day. And one of the things we're working on very hard is, what are the rules that underlie how those new brain cells are being formed, and can we change the game? Instead of making a few thousand new brain cells every day, what if we could make a few million? And wouldn't that be in all of our best interests?
Eight months into the Arrowsmith program, Raymond begins to remember numbers.
Last night we had a conversation about what changes he noticed, and he rattled off all the phone numbers from home that he hadn't used for a while, and that never happened before. That was pretty huge.
But Raymond is exhausted by the grueling demands of this year, and the Evanson family is tired of living apart.
We won't come back to Toronto, no. The people here have been incredible to us, and we'll be forever grateful. But we need to be together as a family.
And Matthew Buckaway won't be back for his second year either.
To avoid it.
I think it's a bit worth it, but for 21 grand, I don't think so. Like, my dad's been crabbing, oh, I could have got a car instead of telling you to go to that school.
Not knowing what to expect, I expected more. And I don't think I've got that.
Alfred has made a lot of progress since September. In terms of being a man, being away from home, he's handling it quite well too, right? So I'm real proud of Alfred.
So this is the Alfred concept.
It's just that I'm taking it to the next level.
But that's good.
Yeah, I'm getting there.
Getting there?
Yeah.
We have mastered talks, right? That's done, right?
Well, I'm close. I am close, I can tell you that.
Doing like what, 6 and the clocks now, eh?
No, 8.
8?
Like, yeah, that's my last.
Oh, okay.
Jordan remains as skeptical as ever about his progress, despite the fact that he can now read a watch in 2 seconds.
You have watch. What time is it?
6:21-ish.
You're right. It's 6:21.
This sample is from October.
It's only when he sees the astonishing change in his handwriting from October to May that Jordan acknowledges that maybe things are improving.
I'll show you the most recent sample from this April. What do you think of that?
There's immense difference. There's noticeable difference, I mean, but I think it's sort of a halfway on way to really nice handwriting and all the other changes.
You're a perfectionist.
I wouldn't say that. I would say I'm ambitious.
Good for you.
Welcome to Arrowsmith School. Welcome to our celebration ceremony. It's been a wild year, an amazing year.
By the end of the school year, all Arrowsmith students are retested and come together for a celebration of their hard work. Matthew's ability to copy text has now improved to an average level, and his reading speed and comprehension have advanced by 1 and 2 grade levels over the past year.
I guess the real test will be see what happens when he gets to high school next year. So when he hits that in grade 9, and to see if it's a difference over grade 8. I expect it will be.
Raymond's tests confirm that in math and reading, he has advanced by 2 grades. But his confidence has soared.
My relationship with Raymond has changed a lot in the last 3 months. I see with my son, anger and frustration are being replaced with understanding and hope.
We want to recognize a man who has traveled from the Caribbean, and he taught us that it's never too late to wear your winter coat, because it does get cold in May. And he also taught us to laugh and laugh.
Alfred's results show that his comprehension and word recognition have improved 3 to 5 grade levels. And Jordan's overall test scores take him to the top of his class. In spelling, reading speed, and comprehension, Jordan has advanced 2 and 3 grades since arriving at Arrowsmith.
Whether his improvement is 90% Arrowsmith or 50% Arrowsmith, it was worth every penny, because this is a kid who now not only is doing things, but believes that he's going to be very, very successful.
Barbara presents Jordan with the school's highest honor, the Principal's Award.
For him. So he's challenged me, pushed me to grow and transform. So I just really want to honor Jordan because he epitomizes the brain that changes itself. So congratulations.
I am truly honored to get this award.
Jordan, Raymond, and Matthew will all return to the public school system next fall. Only Alfred will return to Arrowsmith to do another year of brain training.
I'm happy with what I did this year. I'm happy with, the work ethic. I wish I could have worked more, but, got to be realistic.
If I was to tell someone how was my year, I'd say really boring.
I can't wait to get home.
This is a great year for me because I see it now. I see my change. I'm like, phew.
And now, Barbara herself faces a great new challenge, a possible scientific study of her work, using brain scans to track cognitive changes. She and Adele Diamond meet for the first time.
The important thing is to do pre and post testing, to test the children before they enter your program and other children before they enter other programs.
Yes.
And then follow them.
Yeah, and we did.
Is that something that you might be interested in?
Yes,
I honestly don't know what the answer to the scientific investigation would be. I think it's worth looking at. My hunch at the very beginning is there probably some things that she's come up with that are of value, and there are probably some things that she's come up with that probably aren't of that much value. But I don't know, and I won't know until we have the data in.
Aspects of learning disabilities.
But whatever science discovers about the Arrowsmith method, Barbara's bold experiment has started to bridge the gap between neuroscience and education. opening a dialogue between two solitudes that can begin to share new ideas.
Symbol pattern memory. I think we're really on the cusp of sort of a change in paradigm for programs for children with learning disabilities. My real dream and passion and vision is that every child stepping into grade 1, half day they did cognitive exercises and half day they did academics. And imagine 3 years out, the children that would have been picked up and identified as learning disabled would never even know that they were learning disabled. And the children that had no difficulty would, just enhance cognitive functions.
So one can begin to imagine a new kind of education, which isn't just about filling the contents of your mind, but building your brain in the process using these kinds of techniques.
Okay, guys, looking at me. Hello. Yeah. Good.